All right, here we go. We are live with Shelters by Jesus podcast. We're at 12 McClellan Street in Skowhegan, Maine today, and we're excited that you're watching, that you're joining in with us. Thank you for constantly hitting subscribe, being new subscribers, hitting like. We love it. We're making money off of it for the shelters. If you want to be a part of our ministry, go to sheltersbyjesus.com, and I'll tell you for $9 a month, you're going to take somebody off the street. You can't get better bang for your buck than that. And if you would like books, I have 4 books. They were written by the dumb hick from Skowhegan, who is me. And we have 2 prices. We have $10 of free on them. All you got to do is put your name and address on there, and we will send them right to you. Or you can call the office at 207-474-8833 and say, I'd like those books. And the other thing is, if you want a tour, call that same number at the office, 474-8833, and ask for a tour. And Seth Roberts, the chief of staff, will walk you around the place, introduce you to some of these people you're seeing on the podcast. Today, we're starting a series. We got some ladies who are widows now, whose husbands had great impact on this ministry, along with them. And we wanted to talk with them and talk about their husbands, what it meant, and where they're at today and all of that, because the scriptures say, take care of your widows. And so this is something new that we haven't done yet. We're starting right now. And I am starting with this young lady right here beside me. It's Barbara Neubauer, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. And her husband was Jake Neubauer. And if you read my books, you found out that he and I worked side by side. He was a major cog. We'll be talking about that in a second. Jake was so special, and we'll be asking Bob a lot of things about that and let her explain a lot of it. But anyway, that's who we're talking about. And if you haven't read the books, you'll get to hear about Jake in a minute. In the books, he's called the stubborn old German. And the nicest man I've met in my life, but stubborn old German was a truism. He would have said it himself if he was here today. But he did incredible stuff. So, Bob, how did you and Jake meet, first of all? We'll start there and go from there.
Well, we actually met at a prayer meeting of a friend of mine that lived in Norwalk.
Oh, cool.
Back in the late 80s. And then I went to their church. She was going to Maranatha Church in Anson. And
yep.
I went there after I had seen Jake at the prayer meeting. And I knew he stood up to speak one time. And I thought, now that man, he's either got a speech impediment or he's from somewhere in Europe. I knew that much. And it wasn't too long after that he started calling on me. We went out and we started dating, and
the rest was history.
The rest was history. We got married in 1990 on Wessaronsett Lake.
Well, what a beautiful sight.
Yes.
And Jake has been gone how long now?
3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
And I met Jake ahead of time he was working out at the gym where I was working out at the time, and I invited him to some services, and he came 1 or 2, and he didn't come no more. Come find out afterwards, he thought I was kind of boring. So that's why he said, you got to get some spirit. And but anyway, the next time that I saw him, he came to the house. Is right after you guys had a meeting, right?
Yes, we belonged to a little cell group, they called them, and we would meet for prayer and praise on a Wednesday night at different homes. And it was getting close to Christmas.
It was
2008.
Yes,
and we were thinking it would be nice to take up a collection among the couples. I think there were at least 4 couples, and give to something beyond ourselves, but we didn't know what. So we prayed about it that night. It was a Wednesday night. And Thursday morning, I was still getting the newspaper then, which I don't get anymore.
Yep.
Thursday morning, I opened the newspaper and it said, prayers answered. That's how it introduced what was happening here with the shelter, that there was something going on. And we read that and we shared it at the meeting. I said, this is what I think we're supposed to give to. So Jake brought over the money to
He
you.
did.
Yep.
He brought the article with him.
And the article?
He met me at he came to the front door at the parsonage, and he says, Pastor, he says, we're in a group and we got some money we want to give to some ministry. And he says, he held up the paper and he said, we prayed yesterday. This come out this morning.
That's right.
And it said, prayers answered. And it was a ministry that gave him money. He goes, how much clearer can God get than that? But that was Jake.
That was Jake, yeah.
I just want to go on record. He had more faith than any man or woman I have ever personally known.
He did.
He blew me away.
Yeah.
You know, it was so funny because as I traveled because of what's taking place in the shelter, they go, introduce me to this great man of faith. And I told him, you don't have a clue what a great man of faith is, man. I was the great man of no choices. Jake was the guy who had all the faith. If you read it in book one, when they tried to shut us down, and Jake, they said if we build a shelter, we can stay, keep people in the church. If we show progress. And so I said to Jake, would you want to take that on? And he's building. He said, yeah. He says, what do you have for money? I said, I don't have any. What do you got for equipment? No, I don't have any. What do you got for material? I don't have any. And he said, that sounds interesting. And I said, Jake, because he sat in on the meeting, you heard what they said, and the fire marshal said I could keep people in the church as long as they showed progress on the new shelter, which we had no money, no idea how we do. And I just they asked me if I'd build it. I said yes. And at that moment, all I was doing was trying to keep people from being thrown out. I didn't think there's going to be a shelter out there.
You were just looking for another day there.
I was just, because it was like 20 below wind chill that day and snowing. And so I said, we just got to show some progress, Jake. That's all I was looking for out of him. Jake says, well, okay. So he said, I'll be back. He went home. He came back with 4 stakes. And he says, now start walking. He went out in the back area. There was a little swampy area, but it was froze over. Because he says, you walk there. I say, stop driving the stake. Well, he ended up with 4 stakes, got done, and he looked at me and says, there's your shelter. And I said, that's a carker. And he goes, no, that's a shelter. I go, yes, Jake, that's 4 stakes. And he says, there'll be a shelter there. And
we took a picture, I think, of it.
We took a picture and sent it to the fire marshal. And the fire marshal said, that's progress.
Yes.
Jake had his own camera because he was a camera buff.
Yes.
So he took a picture. No, we didn't have the phone cameras like this. That was he took it back then. He took an actual picture. But Jake really saw a homeless shelter. And here we are with no money, no materials, no nothing. But Jake had such a vision, and he believed that God was going to do that.
Yes, he did.
And there was times, and I'm stuttering now because I was stuttering then. He'd bring up stuff, and I'm going, Jake, this isn't even possible. He says, God's going to do this. And then God would do it.
Yeah.
And he says, I've seen this all. Now, prior to this, before you guys were married even, backing up another notch, he told stories about being on the street himself, right?
He was on the street for a time. I don't know exactly how long it was, but he was sleeping out in his truck in very, very cold weather. And I know he said when he was working on this how he would have loved for there to have been a place like this for him. Yeah,
he kept telling me, he says, I want to do this because I don't want anybody else to be like I was.
Yes.
And that was his heart for it. He had a tremendous heart for it. And funny stuff would go on because he was an engineer. Jake could build or figure out anything.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, he was not only the biggest faith, he's one of the smartest men I ever met in my life, too. He was brilliant. Yeah. You know, you hear him talk with that German, and he usually, he's a little frumpy at times. And so you picture him and you go, this is some dummy. And then he start to talk and start showing you things and go, wow. He's like Columbo.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
Don't look at the frumpy and don't listen to the German accent. Listen, watch what this guy can do.
What's happening?
Yeah, because then we started, and every time something would come up and we'd come up short, we can make it, and he'd say, "We just pray about it. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine." And then he come to me one day. We was out there, we just getting started, and I go, "I just want to get through the spring and not put these guys out." And he says, "There's going to be a shelter, Pastor. I've seen it." And he says, the money's going to come in. And that's before we started getting money
yeah.
like we are now. He said, I had a vision where I saw like gold dust was coming down on this place. And I go, okay. I said, Jake, what did you have for supper? All right. Are you on bad pizza or what? And he goes, you got to get more faith. You got to grow in your faith. And then all of a sudden, the money started coming. And he come to me and said, what did I tell you? And then my wife and I didn't have two pennies to rub together. We was living in a parsonage, and we didn't know what he was going to do if anything happened down the road to us because of all the finances. And he says, God showed me in a vision that he's going to bless you financially too. You're going to have your own place. You're going to have all this. And I'm just standing there looking at him. I'm going, come on, Jake, come on. And wow, now we have our own home paid off in 4 years. Jake, I wish Jake had been alive to see the whole thing, see it today. But
wasn't there a story about a $10,000 check too? The water system?
There was a $2,000 one.
Check, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
hearing about that.
yeah. We had so many instances where we went through. But what you got to understand, if you that are watching this guy was so good. Since we had no money and stuff, we did a big part of that building with homeless people.
Oh yeah.
And not skilled homeless people.
No.
I mean, we have skilled homeless people, but we didn't have them all at that time.
Now, but they do.
We had guys that couldn't drive a nail, and I just remember the one time, and Jake says, "I got an appointment. I got to go, Pastor." But he says, "I got it all set up. We're going to put the walls up," and I marked it right off, and I took him and I showed him the head guy. I took it over. I said, "Now make sure this goes on this side. Yeah. Every one of them's marked. Yeah. Jake comes back, and every one of them was on the other side of the mark. And so I said, well, Jake, can't we adjust? And he looked at me, and he goes, we're going to do this right. This is for Jesus. We're not going to do it that way. What's going to happen is, Pastor, those guys that did that, they're going to take those walls all down. They're going to pull out every nail, and they're going to put them on the other side, and we're going to rebuild the wall."
Yeah.
And I'm just standing there looking at him and go, really? But they did. And you know what? They learned a lesson.
Yeah.
But that's where Jake was. Everything he touched had to be right.
Yeah.
And just a special guy.
Yes.
He was a very special guy.
Very
And
special guy.
he told, he told me stories of his faith and having a truck burn up that he for his business, and he's standing there watching it burn, and the guy is watching him. He's leaning up against the tree looking at it. He said the guy that gave it to him goes, "Oh," he says,
"Are you all right?"
Are you? And Jake
he had
said,
a smile, I think,
"Yeah." He said I was smiling. He thought I'd lost it, that I was so shook up. And I go, he says, "All I can say is I can't wait to see what Jesus is going to do with this one." And somebody
he did.
he got another truck given to him.
Yeah.
But that's how it was with Jake.
And they also participate. Jake and Barb sat up front every praise and prayer.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. They
Yes.
come over in the mornings during praise and prayer.
He felt very strongly about that morning prayer.
And what I loved
So
about
important.
him, I started preaching, and I ended up not preaching without notes and all of this and what I'm doing today. And I get down preaching, come out, and he look at me and go, "Starting to get it. You're starting to get it."
Oh dear.
I so admired and loved that man.
Yes,
I'll
I
tell
know
you.
You did.
If any church could have a guy like that, man, he was just special. I just want people to know that. And I want you to know how privileged we all feel about Jake and how special he was to us.
He was.
And so what's it's probably a hard question to answer. You may not even want to answer it, but it's a question I just wanted to ask is, how was life like as a widow? What's that like?
Yeah, I never thought about it ahead of time, although I knew that Jake had COPD, and I knew that he probably would have, a much shorter lifespan than someone else, although he did live to 80.
Yes, he
He
did.
made it to 80. So I didn't think of it ahead of time. But when it actually happened, it was hard to take, at first, because we did so much together.
I know you guys, unless he was working on the building, you guys
we
were
would take
together.
walks. We just did things together. And that was the hardest part, when it would come to doing those things. and he wasn't there, and to do them alone. But I have to say, and again, goes back to credit for Jake, is that he did take care of my house so well. It wasn't even in his name. It was in my name. But he made it such a comfortable place that most people my age would have opted out and gone to an assisted living.
Right.
Or, I mean, most people my age don't stay in their own home, but I don't really want to leave there. And thanks to the fact that I've had help with people here that have helped me, and with my son-in-law's, Kevin's over there
Yeah.
today doing a few
What a
things.
sweet man he is.
He is doing things around the house. I mean, that I've been able to stay there, and I really consider that a blessing of the Lord that He's allowed that to happen for me.
So you're kind of just dealing with the idea.
Yeah.
So, talking about him having COPD, I forgot. I got to tell a story, man. I got to tell this story. He was working on a camp out in Mercer.
Oh, yes.
And he had to work on the roof, and he had his oxygen tank. He went up on that roof, pulled an oxygen tank behind him.
He was doing that at the shed at our house over here.
I said, Jake, why are you going up on that roof with an oxygen tank? He says, well, roof had to be done. I'm going to do it. And that oxygen tank had to go with me.
Yeah.
I'm going, how many men in the late 70s, almost 80 years old, hooked to an oxygen tank, and you're going to go by and see him up there doing roofing?
Well, I can even tell you another one that even more so. It was the last that he was home. He had been in the hospital, and then he came home for like 2 weeks, I think, before he passed away. But the shed was getting put back together. That was from a tree that had fallen.
I remember that.
In this fall of 2018. And it was getting pretty well completed except for the doors in the front. And Jake had it in mind what he wanted to do with that. And while he was in the hospital for the last time, he was drawing pictures of it. And when he came home, of course, he was very weak because he was only, days away from dying.
Right.
He told Angela, my daughter-in-law, he said, when I can manage to walk around that coffee table 2 times, then I'll be able to finish up what I have to do on that. He was intent on he didn't do it. Kevin finished it up, but I mean that was the intent of his heart, and he just lived his fullest till he didn't live anymore.
I'll tell you, he's living better than ever now.
Oh, he's living good now. No.
And you talk about a man, though, that loved and knew Jesus.
Oh, he did.
I learned.
Right.
I learned a lot about it. I wished I had a grain of sand to his faith, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm not saying that because Barbara's here.
I've heard you say it.
I mean that. If I had just a grain of sand to his faith,
Yes.
You hear about faith that can move mountains. That guy, with me, I wouldn't have made it where we are right now. We would not have had that building up if it hadn't been for him. And he wasn't a young man when he started. His health was bad. He also had a bad heart along with COPD, right?
Right.
And he had all these things going on, and he was here 7 days a week, snowstorms and all. That man showed up.
And sick and all, he'd come over.
Sick and all. He didn't miss. I mean, he just showed up.
Yeah.
And what an example that man was. And
yes.
I tell you, if we have a lot of folks supporting my shelter like Jake, I got no problem. None at all.
Yes.
So if somebody would ask you, Barb, about this place, and they say, is this worth investing in? What would you tell them?
Oh, definitely it is. It's worth investing in. It's it takes you out from beyond your own little problems and your own family and what's going on to a much bigger need, a need that you can see in the media and the newspapers, the need for homeless to be sheltered. And this is more than that. It's really, as you'll hear from the people that have commented, it's really a home. It's not just a place to live. It becomes a home to people. And I know it's a home to me, although I have my own home. This will always be my home church.
And
I'll always look on it as my home church.
And I look out and I see you. It bless me because I speak Saturday nights and people see me streaming and see you come in.
I know.
It's been over 3 years, but honestly, every time I look, I'm still expecting Jake to be sitting there.
I know.
I think there's going to come a time, and I'm going to go, Richard. All right, he's not here. You must
Yeah.
have moments like that
I
when you
do.
look and expect to see him.
I do. I sometimes feel like he's right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
But,
I want to thank you so much for sharing
well,
today. This is
was an
awesome.
enjoyment. It was fine.
Good. So we want to thank you guys for watching and
Yes.
supporting us. And if you if you're not a subscriber, would you please hit subscribe and hit like and let the thing run. Now there's going to be ads come up there, but that brings money in. And if you're some people, I just tell them, look, if you don't want to watch the ads, start the thing, go off, do your thing, come back, and then watch it and take the ads out afterwards. But the people don't know that you're not watching it. As long as it's running,
Yeah.
we get credit for it. So just let it go. Otherwise, watch the ads. But I mean, whatever you want to do. But you can hit skip the ads. But it does help us financially if you do. And so appreciate it. And the other thing you can do is hit share. So it goes to your family, your friends. If you're in a church, pass it on to them and ask them to watch it. This helps get the homeless off the streets. And we are so excited. Everybody supports this ministry, just like Jake and Bob did for those years and others. They showed up at the door from a Bible study. I think it was $200. Actually, I remember how much it was. It was $200.
200 or 250.
Yeah,
I forget.
and I still remember that.
Mhm.
And showing up and going, this is where we want to invest.
Right.
God said, prayers answered.
Yes.
And if you send money to us, I'm going to say, prayers answered.
Oh, yes.
So in the meantime, you'll come back now here.